Wings was released in 1927 and was directed by William A. Wellman and stars Clara Bow, Charles Rogers, Richard Arlen, and Gary Cooper. The film follows two young men, one rich, one middle class, who are in love with the same woman and become fighter pilots in World War I. This is a movie that I've always wanted to see, and ever since I became interested in the film medium when I was in high school, I became obsessed with some of the older classics, and especially the storied history of the Academy Awards. And with a quick glance, I discovered that Wings was the first Best Picture winner. Now, I know that wasn't always the case. Wings was one of two movies that took home the major prize that year, the other film being Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. And while Sunrise has gone on to be regarded as one of the greatest silent films of all time, Wings has kind of been left in the dust, but is still highly regarded by those who have seen it as a technical achievement. I had attempted to watch Wings only once before when I was a kid, and at the time I only got through maybe the first 5 minutes before shutting it off. I wasn't prepared for a silent picture at the time. It was too different from what I was used to, and I've never revisited it until now. Now, I have seen a large number of silent films and have finally broken down that barrier that seemed so intimidating all those years ago, and what we end up having here is a truly remarkable film that should be celebrated on many fronts, from its filmmaking to its intimacy, and I think Wings deserves a bit more credit because in the end, I think it's a great film. Wings is an impressive picture to experience. Its technical achievements are many. Its influence on the rest of cinema cannot go unnoticed. And there were many times throughout the film where I would recognize a particular moment, a shot or scene that felt familiar to me. The one that called out to me the most was this moment where a drill sergeant is yelling in the face of our protagonist. It's the same shot we see here in Stanley Kubrick's own military masterpiece, Full Metal Jacket. I would almost say that All Quiet on the Western Front, which came out only a few years later, was influenced by this film when it came to how it captured warfare in the trenches. I can say too that I don't think I have ever seen aerial combat quite like this in any other film. This is coming from someone who has yet to see Top Gun Maverick, a film I have only heard great things about in terms of its technical achievements in regards to its flying scenes. But in the case of Wings, the flying scenes still to this day are deeply impressive. Being a film called Wings about two fighter pilots, we're bound to see some action in the sky. But little did I know just how far director William Wellman was willing to go, and what we have here are scenes that are jaw-dropping to behold and provide so much intensity in every single frame. We are set apart from the earth, high in the sky, above the clouds, watching these planes dance around in combat with each other, and it's both thrilling and utterly terrifying to witness. I have a huge fear of heights, and Wings manages to put me right there in the situation, and as I watched, I could just feel my stomach turn, knowing these stuntmen are really in the air doing these maneuvers, and my anxiety ramped up with every passing moment, and that there is the beauty of filmmaking. Film transported me to that time and place, and I felt the feelings I would have felt if I were actually there, and few films have really captured that. The dogfights are not the only impressive feat this film manages to pull off, though. The same can easily be said for its depiction of trench warfare, which is just as thrilling as anything in the sky. These battles are large, with hundreds of extras running around the battlefield. It's impressive to say the least, and the final battle of the film, as David runs through the trenches and we see the violent chaos of warfare ensue, provides us with an important glimpse into the horrors of war that would only be farther explored in films like All Quiet on the Western Front. It's a very beautiful film and elegantly crafted, from the large sets such as the party scene of the film, where we get the famous dolly shot as we pass by table after table. There's a great use of special effects as well, such as the firing off of the guns on the planes, that Spitfire, which has all been colored in rather impressively. And to go back to the party scene for a moment, this extended sequence has our protagonist Jack drunk and seeing bubbles everywhere coming out of thin air and eventually surrounding his face. It's a really impressive effect, and what's also impressive is the way the camera distorts to give the implied feeling of drunkenness. Jack tries to look at the beautiful Mary Preston, but the picture becomes blurred and the image warped in a very impressive shot that only lasts but a few seconds. As the silent era was coming towards its end, the pictures experimented in some of the most profound ways, and you see that in films like Wings, Sunrise, and Napoleon especially, as the language of film was changing and true experimentation was being implemented to push the boundaries of filmmaking to its limit. And that's what Wings does best. On every technical level, Wings is one of the grandest pieces of filmmaking from the era, deserving of the award it received for Outstanding Picture. However, I feel like we've left out one integral part to the success of Wings. We could talk all day about its technical achievements and the ways in which it pushes cinema forward, but we can't forget about the human element that gives those images meaning and purpose. The main performers of Wings all do an excellent job of conveying the emotional weight and heart of its story. Clara Bow, in particular, is a treat as the spirited Mary Preston, who is in love with Jack Powell, who only sees her as a friend. He had a great glance at a female protagonist that takes action into her own hands. She's protective and helps with the war effort overseas. Now, it's easy to look at this as an easy promotion of how women can help in war efforts as well. But I think it more serves the character by informing us on who she is as a person, rather than providing any particular message. Clara Bow is enchanting and the heart of the film. Her presence seems to lighten the mood and turn a war film into something a bit more digestible as entertainment. That's not to say the rest of the cast isn't as strong, far from it. Buddy Rogers and Richard Arlen make for a great duo of opposing ideals in the film and provide us with a different look at two classes of human society. Jack is not a member of the upper class. He's boyish and immature and falls for a girl that doesn't even love him back and can't see that Mary is right there in front of him waiting for her chance. Then you have David Armstrong, who comes from a wealthy family. He has a girlfriend, and his life is really ready to take off. The film provides us with a lighthearted, boyish protagonist and a more serious, by-the-numbers one as well. I think these two work so well off of each other and form a budding friendship that is also antagonistic in some regards. Wellman's direction here does a great service to these characters by getting us to care for them, although I would argue Jack can be a bit infuriating at times due to his immaturity as a character. But the film ultimately tells the story of a boy becoming a man through the events of war and tragedy. The film allows for some sentimentality to seep through the picture, especially with the use of mementos. Jack brings with him a picture of the beautiful Sylvia Lewis, the woman he loves, while David brings with him a stuffed bear he loved as a child, gifted to him by his mother. And we see already the stark difference between our two leads, and we see how they see the world. Jack is a hopeless romantic and boyish, and David is older and more mature and provides a sentimental offering for himself when he is in the sky. Now, it's probably about time that we talk about the thing that this movie is known for, and it ties into a larger conversation concerning the Hays Code that I won't get too into. The scene I'm talking about comes at the film's end. David lies dying after being accidentally shot down by Jack. The two have a heart-to-heart as Jack asks for forgiveness for their quick falling out. The scene is extremely intimate, with the two men very close together in frame, and then in a fit of emotion, Jack kisses David, which is really big given the period this film was released in. And I do believe, based off of the information presented in the film, there is a correct queer reading you can get that these two men are actually in love with each other. If you think about it, these two men spend more time together than they do with women in the film. But I don't really see it this way, and I think you can even argue for the exact opposite approach, that these men aren't gay. And the kiss is more a symbol of love towards the characters in a non-sexual way. I'm not dismissing this kiss as romantic, as I said. I think there's a correct queer reading, but I also think it's wrong to say that these two men can't be intimate at this moment unless they are gay, which I think is a poor way to look at it. Still, an intriguing scene and not one I really have any answers to. It's intriguing though because this scene, along with many others in the film, belong in a time and space known as the pre-code era, and this, along with All Quiet on the Western Front, are prime examples of this era of filmmaking. But for those that don't know, the Hays Code was a censorship guideline that was put into effect in the US from 1934 to 1968 that gives studios a list of do's and don'ts. If you look at many of the pre-code era films, they're much more sexual in nature and violent, and deal with subject matters in a way that would be unheard of during the time the code was implemented. So scenes such as the kiss or many violent and bloody scenes found in Wings would have been omitted and never exist if this film had come out in the years the code was active. It's an intriguing bit of film history and makes Wings stand out even more as a film ahead of its time. Wings is a great film. I think it should be essential viewing for anyone interested in the history of cinema. Its technical aspects are still incredible, even today, with aerial battles that truly put you there and feel really dangerous too. It's a beautiful looking film and it looks at war through the way in which it changes men. Jack leaves for the war a boy and returns a man haunted by the things he's seen. But there's hope for a future with Mary, and that provides some semblance of comfort. I could see why this was such a crowd pleaser in the day. It combines all these different elements to make a deeply pleasing experience. You have action, romance, comedy, and good old-fashioned melodrama, and I think it mostly works out in the film's favor. There's a lot to dissect about Wings and why it's worth watching even now, and there's little I can really do and say in a short video like this, but I can say Wings is worth the watch. It's great and an important part of film history that I think deserves to be talked about more often instead of forgotten and left to obscurity. And with all that said, I'm going to give Wings an 8 out of 10. If you're interested at all in seeing the first Best Picture winner, I say Wings is definitely worth it. There's just so much about this film that's influential to so many other films that it's insane to me that it's not talked about more. I wouldn't call it perfect. There were moments here and there where my interest waned, but that doesn't take anything away from this movie. It's still, all in all, a great film and worth the watch. That's all I got for you, so as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and stay positive.